Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Beginning Photoshop. In this video we're going to be working with layers and a layers panel, which is this thing right here. A lot of times when people are first learning Photoshop, they have a hard time grasping how layers work and what they actually are. Some people pick it up right away, but some people have a hard time with it. It's actually fairly easy to understand, but sometimes people get intimidated with all the stuff that they see on the screen and their minds are just going crazy, so they're having a hard time figuring out what layers is. But it's really not bad. It's pretty easy. It's a fundamental, and it's imperative that you learn this if you want to get good with Photoshop. So I'm going to try to make it as easy as possible. If you don't see it on your screen, the shortcut to open up your layers panel is F7. Go ahead and click that, and this opens up your layers panel. Alternatively, if you don't want to open up by using a shortcut, you can go up to Window and select Layers. And it also says F7 there, which is your shortcut. So we're going to go ahead and open that up and we're going to get into this. Alright, so this is your layers panel right here. And the best way to explain what layers are is as sheets of paper. So if you'll look, layer 2 is my paper and everything I just wrote on the paper. So I can select it and move it around as I please. So it's pretty much what a layer is. It's a sheet of paper that you can draw on and you can do whatever you want with. And it's independent of other layers. So I'm going to go ahead and try to explain this a little better, and I'm going to show the functions and all the settings in this layers panel here. So let me go ahead and hide this and we'll get started. So we have this wood background here, and this is going to be pretty much our desktop, if you like to call it. So I got some pictures down here and we're going to start with this here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open this up full size to the screen. So I'm going to go into your tool panel here and I'm going to double click the hand, and that's going to open it up full size to the screen to fit onto the screen. And what we have here is another sheet of paper, which is our layer, and on top of it we have a paw print, and this is what we're going to use. Let's go over here to your layers panel and we'll explain this. The bottom layer is notebook paper, okay, and if I select that, you can see I drag it around. It's a piece of notebook paper. That's all it is, and that's layer 1. On layer 2 I have the paw print. You could drag this around independently from the notebook paper. Once again, notebook paper, and then layer 2 is the paw print. If you want to rename layer 2, there's a few ways to do this. You can right click on it, go to layer properties, and you can name it right there, paw print. Alternatively, you can double click on the name layer 2 and rename it that way. Now I definitely recommend naming all your layers because sometimes you'll have dozens of layers and it will definitely make it easier in the long run. So we're going to go ahead and get into this layers panel here and we're going to explain what everything does. I'm going to start at the bottom here. We have our paw print on layer 1 and we have our notebook paper on layer 2. Now I just like to note out this checkerboard background means it's a transparent background, so there's nothing there, so you don't have to worry about that showing up in any of your prints or your photos or whatever you're doing. So let's go ahead and get into some of these options down here. We're going to start with the functions down at the bottom here. First one is your trash can. That's if you want to delete a layer. So if you have your layer selected that you want to delete, you can click on it and it'll ask you if you want to delete the layer. Click yes, it'll delete the layer. Another way of doing this to delete the layer, you could drag the paw print and drop it right on the trash bin, and that will delete the layer as well. Control Z will bring it back. The next icon next to the garbage will be your new layer. If you sit on it for a second, it'll hover and say create new layer. So create that and you have a new layer here. So you want to click on that, name it new layer. Now whatever you do on this layer is going to be independent of its own. So if you wanted to go ahead and just draw something on here like that, that's now on its own layer, which you can also move independently however you'd like. Real simple, it's not hard. You can think of everything on pretty much its own sheet of paper. So we don't need that, we're going to throw that out. The next icon next to create a new layer will be create a new group, and this is just a folder so you can organize all your layers into groups. So same thing, if you want to rename the group, you can double click it and name it all, and then to put stuff into your folder you pretty much just click it and drag it. This little arrow right here will hide everything in that group, and expand it will show everything in the group. Alright, so let's go ahead and delete the group. We don't need that. The next icon next to the group is create a new fill or adjustment layer. We're not going to get too much into that, but if you click it, you can see all your options. You have solid color, gradient, pattern, brightness, levels. So just for an example, I'll show you the exposure, and here's your exposure settings. You could drag it and you see how it changes your exposure. Now notice how this layer, this adjustment layer, affects everything below it. So if you were to drag it right here, it's not going to affect the paw now. It's just going to affect the notebook paper. So the adjustment layers, that's beyond the scope of this tutorial. We'll get into that in other videos. So let's just go ahead and delete all this. By holding Control-Alt-Z, we'll get rid of everything, and we're going to close our adjustment layers panel. Next to our adjustment layers icon, we have add new layer mask. I'm not going to get too much into that, but what that will do is create a layer mask, so you can pretty much hide whatever is on that layer without destroying it. It's all still there. Looks like we're deleting it, but we're not. It's actually all still there, and we can bring it back however whenever we want. That also is beyond the scope of this tutorial. Alright guys, next to your add layer mask is add layer style, and this is a very useful function of your layers panel, and you'll definitely be using it a lot. So if we open up, click that open, you'll see all the settings underneath. You have your blending options, which opens up all this in its own panel. So we're just go ahead and open that up. And this is what we have. We have drop shadow, inner shadow, outer glow, inner glow, bevel and emboss, contour, texture, and a bunch of other settings. We're not really going to get into too much of this in this tutorial, but we might get into another stuff here. But just to show you how this works, I'll just click overlay, color overlay, and you can see how it changes color. Now, if you want to change the settings of the color overlay, you actually have to click on the word color overlay, and you'll see everything change here. So you have your opacity. You can make the opacity go down. Obviously, this is your color that you're going to change it to. So select blue, and you see, set your opacity, and you reset to default, and that's back to normal. So check mark means it's active, uncheck it means it's not active. So you can play with those when you get a chance, and I'll go into more of these in another tutorial. So let me just go ahead and close that right now. Next to your add layer style is link layers together, and what that does is it links your layers together. Right now, our paw print is on its own layer, and our notebook paper is on its own layer. So if we want the paw print to seem like it's on the paper without actually merging it to the paper, we can just select the paw print, hold Control, and select the notebook paper. Now you see they're both selected, and then the link icon has just appeared. Click that, and you see they're both linked together now. So now when we click one, it shows the link. We click this one, it's linked together. We go to drag it, and it looks like the paw print is actually part of the paper, even though it's actually independent and separate of its own. So if you wanted to unlink that, you unlink it, and you can go ahead and move your paw print around as you please. So now we got that out of the way, let's go into some more of the features up top here. We're going to start with this drop down here. This is your blending mode, and what this does is this blends your top layers with your bottom layers in a bunch of different fashions. So I'm just going to open it up, and I'll show you how this works. So this is going to actually blend the paw print with the notebook paper according to the selection you choose. So if we go ahead and choose difference, you see how it chooses a difference, and it kind of blends it with the background here, no matter where you put it. If we go on, we can go back to difference and change it to overlay, and you can't really see it, but it's there. It's overlaid on top. Let's see, we have another one here. Color burn. See how it burns the color here? You can go ahead and play around, and you can find what you like, and you can come up with all sorts of crazy effects using this. So we're just going to go back to normal here, and I'm going to go right next door here to your blending options, which is your opacity. 100% means there's no transparency to it, and you start dragging it down, you see it starts to become transparent. All the way down to 0 will completely hide your layer. So we're going to put that all the way back up here. And you see underneath fill. And what exactly is fill? Let me go ahead and click that and show you what happens. The whole thing disappears. That looks just like opacity, doesn't it? This takes a little explaining, so we're going to explain this. Let's go ahead and click your paw print, and let's go into your effects panel by double clicking. Notice how I did that. I double clicked this area right here. Alternatively, you can go down here and click blending options. I find it much easier to just click right here, open this up. So let's go ahead and put some kind of style on this, and I have a transparency on the paw, so this might not look wonderful, so we're going to put a stroke on there. Notice how I clicked on the word stroke to get the settings up for the stroke, and I can adjust the stroke here like this, the opacity of that stroke, outside position, inside position, center position, fill type, gradient, color. So let's go ahead and work with the stroke right there. And we'll put the opacity right here, just so I can explain what the fill layer does. Let's close that. Now we have a stroke on here. And as you can see, we have the effects on now. And all the effects popped up below the layer of the paw print, which shows that it's attached with little eye icons, which these will toggle your effects on and off. So if you click that, click the eye right there, and you can see it shuts the stroke off that we just applied. Click effect, and it will shut off any effect underneath. So if we put another, say we put a bevel and emboss on there, you might not have seen it happen, but you'll see it'll pop up there. So let's just go ahead and take that off real quick. So let me explain what the difference is between the opacity and the fill. The fill affects your layer styles, and the opacity affects the whole entire layer. So like I said, lower the opacity and everything disappears. And now if you lower the fill, it's going to make your actual layer fill transparent, but it's going to leave your effects still into play. So if you didn't want the green of the paw print, but you wanted that stroke there, all you do is you lower the fill. You start to see the fill is disappearing, but you still have your effects that you applied. So now you can see the stroke is there, and you get your bevel and emboss you can still see on the corners here. See, if we close these, you can see that. Now you can see the bevel and emboss is there. Put the fill back up a bit, and you can see it starts coming back into play. So that's the difference between the opacity and the fill. The opacity affects the whole layer, makes the whole layer transparent, and the fill makes your shape or object transparent and leaves your effects in action. You can come up with some really neat effects by using this. So obviously this is not a nice one, so we're just going to go ahead and put this back, and we're going to shut our effects off here again. Alright, now next to this, close all our effects. If you click this drop down here, if you click this little arrow here that's pointing up, it'll merge all your effects. Why would you want to do that? After a while, you're going to have a whole bunch of these effects here, and if they're all open, your layers panel is just going to get really, really long. So it's best to just keep it nice and organized. For some reason, if you wanted to copy your layer here, you can click it and drag it to new layer, and you'll create a brand new layer. So if you see if all these were open, you see how it starts getting real long after a while, you know. Click these and get new layers, and then all these are open, and it's just, you know, it's real long. So you'd have to go ahead and close all these. So we're just going to go ahead and delete all these that we just made here, click them all, and drag them to the trash bin. Alright, so now we're going to go into the icons next to the fill. And this right here is lock all. And what this will do is this will lock everything on that layer. And you try to move it, and it'll tell you you cannot complete your request because the layer is locked. So no matter how many times you try, it's not going to work. So to unlock it, you click unlock that. The icon next to that is lock position, which is going to lock the position in so you can't move it. So we're going to click that and try to move it. Once again, we can't move it. No matter how many times we try, we can't move it. But we can still draw on it if we please. The next icon next to lock position is lock image pixels. What this one does is it locks your image from being edited. Notice I can't paint on it now, but if I want to, I can move it about. But I can't put any effects on it. They just simply won't apply. The next icon next to lock image pixels is lock transparent pixels. And this one's going to take a little bit of explaining. So we're going to go ahead and lock the transparent pixels. Notice I can still move it now. Say we want to take our paint bucket and we wanted to color the glow, that black glow there, which is a transparent part of the paw print. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to put a red, we're going to try to change it to red and see what happens. Well, that's definitely not what we were trying for. There's no transparency. That just looks disgusting. That's not what we wanted at all. So let's go ahead and Control Z and undo that. Now let's click Lock Transparent Pixels, and then let's try to change the color of the transparent glow that's on the paw print and see what happens now. It preserves your transparency so you can color it and work with it. As in before, it won't. So we're going to go ahead and do that. And so all this to these icons up here is pretty simple. Alright, then also if you notice in your top corner here, you see another little drop down arrow here. If you click that, you can see these options that you have. You have new layer, duplicate layer. So if you want to duplicate that paw print from here, you can do the same thing. Delete layer, new group, you have new group from layers, which that will do is it will create a new group from the selected layers. So let me show you how that works. Let's select notebook paper and your paw print and go up here, select new group from layers, and then we'll just keep it to group 1, and it automatically put the layers that I had selected into that group. So they're in there right now, and we're just going to go ahead and leave it right now. So we'll just rename this all. Okay, we'll expand this and we'll go back up here. Lock all layers in group, self-explanatory, that will lock all layers in group. This will convert a layer to a smart object. That's a bit beyond the scope of this tutorial. We'll cover that in other tutorials. You have your group properties. If you want to open that up, get your group properties, which is the name. You can select a color if it might be easier for you to remember, so you can name everything. You can color everything a certain color so you know if something's red, it's in that group. So we'll just go ahead and leave that right there. Merge group will merge everything in that group to one image. So now this layer is everything. So we have that on its own layer. So let's just go ahead and undo that. We'll go back up here again. Merge visible, that will merge all your visible layers. In this instance, it will be every layer because everything is visible right now. If you wanted to hide a layer, all you do is click the little eye icon next to it, and you can hide the layers accordingly. All right. Back here, flatten image will flatten the complete image, and notice how your transparent background has disappeared and your whole image is actually locked now. You can't do anything with it. That's good when you're completely done with the image. So let's go back in here a bit again. Okay, your animation options, we're not really going to go into that right now. And then you have your panel options. This is the settings on how you want your layers to be displayed. So your thumbnail contents could be layer bounds or entire document, and your thumbnail size. If you want these bigger or smaller, let me just show you what it looks like with the big ones. And that's how it changed all your thumbnails real big now, so it's a little bit easier to see. I'm just going to go ahead and put it back to small because I like it that way. If you want to take thumbnails off completely, that's up to you. You can do that as well. I don't really know anybody that does that. I surely don't do it, so I'm just going to go ahead and put it back to the small ones. You have use default mask on layer fills, your expand new options, which is when you add new layers, it expands by default, and add copy to copied layers and groups. So when you copy something, when you copy an image, when you duplicate a layer, it will say paw print copy. So we'll leave a copy at the end there. We're not going to go ahead and mess with that. And that's about it right now. So to better understand layers on how layers are all sheets of paper, I have a few set up here, and I'm going to hide this one, and I'm just going to show you how they work. Like I said, these are all independent layers. Let me go ahead and move this to the side. Okay, we have this paper here, and this. So if you look at our background here, which is our wood background, see we have the background, and notice how this background is locked and I can't move it. When you open up an image, it's automatically locked to the background. To get that off, you can just right click and select layer from background, and you can name it right here, wood desk, or whatever you'd like it to be. And if you want to select a color just so it's easier to remember, you can do that as well. I'm going to undo that. Another way to get rid of it, I find to be a little easier, you just double click where the lock is and you'll get the same settings. So let's go ahead and name that wood desk, and we'll give it the color violet. That's fine. And there we go. Now this wood desk, oops, is on its own layer, so we can move it around however we'd like. We have our beginning layer that we started with right here. Now to select it, all you do is you just select your layer anywhere like this and you just drag it. So we don't need this, so we're just going to delete this right now, throw that in the garbage. There's nothing on this layer 3, so we're going to delete that too. I don't even know what it's doing there. By now you should probably understand how layers work, but just so you understand a little bit better, notice how we have these layers right here. This is its own layer, and we're just going to click it and drag it to this desk here. So we have this desk with a paw print, and we have this layer is on top of this layer. So this paper acts as its own layer. That's pretty much it. Layers are transparent pieces of paper. And we have this sheet of paper right here, and this is also a layer. So now as you see, we have our two layers, and you can do whatever you'd like with them. Notice how they're on their desktop. And that's it. That's simply it. That's all there is to it. Layers are their own sheets of paper that you can move independently however you'd like. You can have as many layers as you want, and you can put them all over the place. And you see the usefulness of how many different layers you can have and the effects that you can do. If you want to move a certain sheet of paper, say you want this paper in the back here on top of this paper right here, all you do is click layer 1, copy to, it says, and just drag it to the top, and you'll see this is now on top here. Now, since this is just a bunch of papers, it's really, just a tutorial, but it's definitely a good idea to rename all your layers. So when your file gets really big, you know what everything is. So if you want to name that top paper, and then this one would be second paper, and so on. So now you have all these layers independent of each other. And that's pretty much it. Layers are just sheets of paper with everything on them, and you can manipulate them however you would please, and you can do whatever you'd like. Well, I hope this tutorial was helpful to some people in explaining layers. If you have any questions, make sure to send me a message or leave me a comment. If there's something you'd like to see or you're having troubles with, also ask me and I'll see if I can help you out. Or if there's something you'd like to see on a future tutorial, let me know and I'll be sure to do that for you. I hope this was helpful. Thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe. See you next time.